Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's Alpharetta City Council meeting, October 17th, 2022. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Note for the record that all members of council are present and accounted for, except for Councilman Will, who will not be able to join us this evening. And as always, we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you're able, please stand and join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item up on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda, and the consent agenda consists of several items. First one being council meeting minutes for the meeting of October 3rd, 2022. Second is the alcoholic beverage license applications, which are PH-22-AB-29 Toscana Ita LLC, DBA Lucy Steakhouse, 5805 Windward Parkway, Alpharetta, Georgia 30005, PH-22-AB-30 Atlanta Fantastical Opco, LLC, DBA Santa's Secret Stash, 3180 Avalon Boulevard, Alpharetta, Georgia 30009. Also, item C, which is the financial management report for the month ending August 31st, 2022. Item D, conflict waiver between the City of Milton, Georgia, the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, and the North Fulton Community Improvement District. Item E, which is the intergovernmental agreement, Windward Parkway, Highway 9 Area Strategic Master Plan. And that is all that is on the consent agenda. Is there anyone on the council who would like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilman Mitchell, a second by Councilman Hypes. I believe you had your by and no's. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So now we'll move on to the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. First item under the public hearing will be PH-22-11/V-22-24 Wills Overlook. Mr. Wood, I believe you have the floor.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'm going to be recusing myself. My law partner will be presenting for the applicant.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The first item before you this evening is a change to conditions of zoning and variance to allow for 16 for-sale townhomes on 2.24 acres in the downtown overlay. Variances are requested to allow an alley adjacent to Highway 9 without an intervening building and to modify the landscape strip along the west property line. The applicant proposes to save and restore the Earl Wood House, which is on the city's contributing historic properties list. And I do have the location map on the overhead. The property is located at 531 South Main Street. It's near the northeast corner of Highway 9 and Wills Road. Proposed density within this development is 7.13 dwelling units per acre. This is a street view of the property. This is the historic Earl Wood House. This is a view from the west end of the property. It abuts the Waffle House on the west side. And then there's an old barn structure on the east end of the property. Property is zoned DTMU, downtown mixed use. As I mentioned, the historic structure on the property, that structure is a two-story structure. It's about 3,500 square feet. Originally built as a residential property, being used as a retail establishment for the porch on South Main. Hardship supporting the applicant's requested variance includes the long, shallow configuration of the lot, as well as the historic structure on the property. The applicant also provided an alternate plan that showed the alley with the units pulled up to the road with the alley behind. That plan had pretty significant impacts on trees on this property as well off-site in Wills Park. The property was rezoned to DTMU in September of 2018. The current applicant has a different vision for the property. When it was rezoned in 2018, it was going to be used for an outdoor music venue for Matilda's, also for a special event facility within the historic structure. The current applicant has a different vision for a townhome community on this property and therefore requests changes to the previous conditions of zoning. This is the applicant's site plan. Shows 16 townhomes with the Earl Wood House here. The Earl Wood House, they show the addition of a garage with 2 parking spaces within that garage, as well as the 18-foot driveway. There are 16 townhomes, as I mentioned previously. This is a one-way alley off of South Main Street. Townhomes are 26 feet wide. And they are set back approximately 60 feet from South Main Street. Along the frontage, we wanted to make sure that if we were going to support the variance to allow the alley between adjacent to the road, that there was good decorative landscaping and a fence or wall through the area along South Main Street. And so the applicant provided these elevations or renderings. So this would be the Earl Wood House and the new townhomes on either side. So along North Main Street, there would be decorative brick columns with decorative fencing in between, landscaping on both sides of that fencing. This shows an entrance through the property, past the historic structure, and over to Wills Park. We are trying to gain connections from South Main Street over to Wills Park as part of the South Main Street LCI plan that we're working on currently. Before I get to the applicant's landscape plan, I just want to mention that each of the townhomes have the 2 required parking spaces within the garage, as well as 2 parking spaces within the driveway. There are also 14 on-street parking spaces along the new alley. Just go back to that site plan. So the on-street parking spaces are here. Downtown code requires 40 parking spaces for this development. They're showing a total of 82 spaces. They propose to use the Earl Wood House as a private residence. Downtown mixed use requires a minimum 10% amenity space within this property. However, if you save the historic structure, you have met the open space requirements. The applicant did go beyond that, even though they were not required to provide open space. They do show about just under a half acre of open space on the property. It's about 18.4%. There's a walkway along the north side of the property, so this would be an amenity for these residents here. There's a public connection through the property that would be open to the property to allow the public to traverse the site over to Wills Park. And there's an existing trail system within Wills Park that this would need to connect into. There are tree saves shown on the plan along the north and east property lines, as well as behind the historic structure. As I mentioned, the alternative plan that the applicant provided with the alley on the back side of this development had impacted several of the trees within Wills Park, including a 41-inch oak that would need to be removed. They are showing some underground detention on this plan. So these areas right underneath the guest parking along the alley, there is underground detention. If that needed to be maintained, it would not impact access through the alley. Showed you the renderings. Of course, those renderings show a flat roof product. First floor is brick with the upper 2 floors siding. The material on the existing historic structure is siding. We did show the renderings to the city's downtown consultant, who was believed that they were generally consistent with our design regulations in the downtown. Of course, in consideration of the review criteria for a variance, we did believe that the proposal is consistent with the vision in the downtown master plan. It's consistent with that future land use of the property. We believe the density is consistent with the densities that have been approved along South Main Street in the downtown. And they are proposing to save a historic resource with this development and provided that desired public connection through the property. The applicant provided a citizen participation plan, which indicated that they'd not received any comments from the public. We showed this to the public at the August 10th Community Zoning Information Meeting, and there was one public comment in support of the request. And with that, staff is recommending approval of PH 2211 V 2224 Wills Overlook, subject to, I believe we were at 22 conditions, and I'll go through those. Condition 1 is the site plan specific condition, tying it to the site plan prepared by Engineering 303, dated 9/9/22. 2 is the architecture and materials, tying it to the submitted renderings that I showed you by Tracy Ward, dated 7/18/22. Also ties it to downtown, complying with the downtown consultant's comments and final approval by DRB, with the townhomes having four-sided architecture, materials, and details. Condition 3 addresses the Earl Wood House, requiring that property go through the Historic Preservation Commission's process during the restoration, and that being done by first CO. Condition 4 addresses the streetscape along South Main Street, including the decorative fence and columns and landscaping it, tying it back to those renderings by Tracy Ward, dated 7/18/22. Final approval by DRB. 5, building height shall not exceed 3 stories. 4 stories is allowed within the zoning, so they're showing 3, and we're limiting that. 6 allows the townhome orientation that you see on the plan, so front-loaded townhomes. 7, landscape strip along South Main Street shall be planted with shade trees and ornamental shrubs as a continuation of what has been planted or designed in the downtown and outside of utility easements and overhead utilities as approved by staff. 8, internal alley shall be developed as depicted on the site plan prepared by Engineering 303, dated 9/9/22, with final approval by staff. Also calls for decorative pedestrian lighting, and that the alleys be private and maintained by the HOA. 9, landscaping shall be required along both sides of the alley as depicted on the landscape plan by Frawley Associates LLC. And let me just go to that because I did leave that up on the screen. This is the landscape plan that is referenced in this condition. Condition 10, developer addresses the pedestrian connection through the development and requires that it be open for public access, maintained by the HOA. Condition 11, landscape strip along the west property line shall be planted as depicted on the easement planning plan labeled Exhibit B with final approval by staff. This would be Exhibit B, and this is the west property line. So this is the property line adjacent to the Waffle House. They have a sanitary sewer easement running through here. So they had to plan on either side of that sanitary sewer easement. Typically, we would require a 5-foot landscape strip along that property line. So they're not going to be able to add any additional trees within this area, which the code would require one every 50 feet. So they'd be required about 3 trees along here. What they've done is they've done two rows of taller growing shrubs. Condition 12, project entrances shall include a decorative paver, apron, landscaping, decorative wall, and/or fencing with columns as approved by DRB. Condition 13 addresses the open space and ties it to the submitted site plan. Condition 14 requires creeping vines on retaining walls or low walls. Condition 15 addresses the tree saves. 16, developer shall save additional trees of quality and/or tree groupings as approved by staff. 17, fences and walls visible from the public right-of-way shall be decorative as approved by staff. Unfinished wood fences and decks shall not be visible from the street. 18 requires that HVAC equipment not be visible from the public right-of-way. 19 addresses the stormwater management infrastructure. Because it is underground within that new private right-of-way, we have some conditions in there to make sure that the maintenance is addressed by the HOA. 20 requires garbage pickup from within the development. 21 limits to no more than 10% of the residential units being rented. And then 22, the above conditions of zoning shall replace the conditions related to file number Z18-08/CU1807, V1813, the porch, special event facility, Matilda's outdoor music venue. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Do we have any questions from council at this time? Thank you, Mr. Woodman. If the applicant would like to come forward, now is your opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Michael, and good evening, Mayor and Council. David Belle-Isle, and I've got Sarah Spencer and Brian King as well as part of our team. For the longest time, along Highway 9, Alpharetta, I'm biased, but it's true. Alpharetta has done a much better job with respect to Highway 9 than our sister city, who will remain unnamed to the south. And that distinction over time has grown. And this project, I think, is in that same vein to continue to gentrify, we'll say, Highway 9 and to make it really more along the spirit of Alpharetta. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a new project here, 16 townhomes, preserve a historic house, and also preserve greater and better access to Wills Park, all right nestled next to a Waffle House, which is perhaps the chief amenity. But there's a few things on Highway 9 that are around it that kind of illustrate this point, though, that the things that are along Highway 9, certainly further south, are very commercial and industrial. Even here across the street, there's a storage facility. You've got the Waffle House that we mentioned before. There's a paint and body shop just a couple of parcels down. But we think this points it in the right direction. But in order to do it, we do need a couple of tweaks. And that's why we're here, is two tweaks, two variances. One is the drive aisle that you've seen and illustrated on the picture there. I don't know if you can throw that back up. Per our code, that drive aisle should be behind those units. If we do that, as was mentioned by Mr. Woodman, there would be significantly more tree damage. But also on the property value side, when something's new and shiny, it always does fine. People like new and shiny. But things don't stay new and shiny forever. And so if we did that, the private space for that resident would be up against Highway 9. And I think long-term that value will have trouble holding. Whereas if you put the private space, the backyard, so to speak, up against Wills Park, it creates longer lasting values. And at the same time, I think is a better experience in providing the public access over to Wills Park. The other thing is also tree related as well, and that's just the sewer line. Take it on that short little piece of the western boundary line as opposed to taking it along the boundary between this property and Wills Park, which would not do either property any good service. So those are the tweaks that we're asking, and happy to answer questions, or if our team can answer questions, let me know.
Thanks, sir. Do we have any questions from council? Councilman Mitchell.
The plan looks really good, and I'm glad you're saving the Earl Wood house. I like all the landscaping around it. My one request is that you add brick and stone to some of these, because to break up some of the monotony of the clapboard throughout the project. So what I'd like to ask if you all would be amenable to 6 to 8 facades that would, 6 to 8 facades that would either be non-painted brick or stone. They don't have to go four-sided, just on the front, so that it appears to be a little more upscale from Main Street.
Right, so I did bring this up with the applicant and asked where they were on it. The reason that there is siding there is that the intention was to match with the historic home. That being said, what they preferred to do was have it, to go through the design review process and staff to come up with, but I don't know that they were prepared to lock into a particular plan tonight. So that would be the applicant's request.
Okay. All right. I have spoken with staff about it, and they think it would also improve, but, so, all right. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thanks, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
Negative, Mr. Mayor.
However, if there's anyone here that would like to come forward and speak, now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I'd offer a motion tonight to approve PH-22-11/V-22-24/Wills Overlook as presented tonight with the 22 conditions presented by staff.
Second.
Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, a second by Councilman Binder. Any discussion? Councilman Mitchell?
I really think this project needs more varied facades on it to make it really the best it can be. And so I'd like to strongly suggest that that be added to this project.
I think they've done a good job, and I think the DRB can help them with that process. I'm not going to handcuff 6 units to brick and stone at this time.
Just to clarify, because of the location, does this have to go through DRB?
Yes, yeah, this is South Main Street's a corridor of influence, but any residential or non-residential in the downtown would go to DRB as well.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify and make sure the public was aware of that.
Mayor, I'd like to add to that. I appreciate it. I know we add a lot of brick and stone to everything. Alpharetta has its history. I looked a lot of, we're clapboard siding houses, so I don't think everything has to be stone. It brings monotony when we keep seeing the same thing. So I just want to make sure my points are clear to when DRB is getting their instructions that, I'm good with what the client had, the applicant presented with their renderings. So I know sometimes DRB needs a clear direction, at least from the majority of council. So just wanted to add to that.
So we do have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving PH-22-11, V-22-24, Wills Overlook, with the conditions outlined by staff, please vote yes, otherwise vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Congratulations.
Council, thank you so much.
Good to see you again, David. Take care. Next item up on the public hearing portion of tonight's agenda is MP-21-10/Z-21-12/CU-21-14 Continuum. Director Cook, you have the floor.
Should I proceed or give Councilman Hypes a minute to return?
Perhaps you should wait. I don't think it'll be too long, but
Okay.
if you have any opening comments before you begin your presentation, feel free.
They all pertain to the public hearing, but it's great to be here this evening. How about that?
Just Stretch it.
Yes, yes, yes. I wish I was good at telling jokes, but I'm not.
At least you're aware of it.
Yes,
Most of us
yes,
are
yes,
not.
yes. It does take self-awareness, so.
And now that Councilman
Very-
Hypes has joined us, please begin.
Okay, thank you. The area is shown to you on the screen. It's at the corner of West Side Parkway and Windward Parkway. The request, if approved, would allow for the construction of a 51.86 acre mixed-use development consisting of 1,325,299 square feet of office. Of that, 517,399 square feet exist on the property. Also requesting 73,800 square feet of retail restaurant, 98 for-sale townhome units, and 280 for-rent units. The proposed density is 7.29 dwelling units per acre, and a master plan amendment is requested to Phase 2 of the Oxford Green Master Plan, and rezoning is requested from O&I to MU. A conditional use is requested to allow dwelling for rent and dwelling for sale attached. And variances are requested to reduce parking, reduce minimum commercial percentage, and reduce landscape strips along new internal streets, reduce the landscape strip along Windward Parkway, and allow utilities and easements in the landscape strip. And I'll walk you through some of those variances. And a lot of them are because there's an existing building that's over 500,000 square feet on the property. And I'll put the site plan here. As I noted earlier, the property is developed with 2 office buildings. That's the blue that you see here. But as part of the redevelopment, they are proposing to break up those 2 buildings, build the 2 new office and retail at the front, and have that connection from Windward Parkway into the development. When you come into the development, the proposal is for a half acre of green space, as well as retail buildings, and then retail with office over the retail that would encircle this public space. They also have 5 different parking decks, and 2 of those are standalone. One parking deck is along at the entrance of West Side Parkway. Of course, it's far enough set back from West Side that with architectural requirements, then this will not appear as a parking deck along this corner. There's also a standalone parking deck along Windward Parkway, and there is some tree save along Windward Parkway that will screen part of that parking deck. The 3 light blue are additional proposed office. It's a little over 800,000 square feet that they're proposing. So with the 500, a little over 1 million square feet in total office with the proposal. They also have 280 rentals that are shown in the middle. That's the yellow. And with the 280 rentals, they do have active retail that's on the first floor, fronting and connecting, of course, to the other public space that they have created. They have 98 townhomes that are located here on the south side of the property. And then up here in the corner, this is the property that's located to the east. That's it's a hotel, Hampton Inn, I believe, Hampton Inn. And then this is actually the steakhouse. That's Cabernet Steakhouse. So that's cut out from this corner. It's not part of the proposal. And then, of course, to the west of the property is Fiserv and other existing office. One of the requests and the variance that they're requesting is a reduction from the required 10% for retail to 4% that's required as part of the mixed-use zoning ordinance. Some of the reasons that they're requesting that is there is such a retail presence along Windward Parkway. Retail center that's located across the street just to the north. So there's retail centers along North Point Parkway. So they're looking for a reduction, although the pink areas are shown as the retail. It doesn't meet the 10% minimum requirement for mixed use. They are looking for a parking reduction from 6,693 spaces to allow 5,020 spaces. This is a 25% reduction, and the code does allow for up to 25% reduction, which is what they're requesting, if they submit a shared parking study and you can show that some of these uses are sharing parking spaces, that they're not all needed at the same time. When we look back through other approvals, we do have 2 other mixed-use developments in the city, which include Northwind Summit as well as Windward Park that received a parking reduction of 25%. And they did submit a peak generation demand that showed at around 10 a.m. That's the peak demand, and they would need 4,779 parking spaces. So we were in agreement with the 5,020 that they're proposing. They do plan to build this parking deck here along West Side Parkway. They will build it so that if additional parking is needed, if they do have users, different employers that need additional parking, they will have the capability to add 273 parking spaces to this parking deck. Just to cover tree saves, the tree saves are the areas where they already have existing trees. So this small stream buffer area exists, and it has existing trees. They also have this smaller stream that's open. Of course, currently it's surrounded by parking. Those trees would remain. They also have the 60-foot buffer that's required along Georgia 400, and these areas along West Side Parkway have existing trees that will also will remain on the project. Also along Windward Parkway, so most of all the clouded areas are showing where the tree save will be located. And of course, right now, it's about 16 acres of parking lot, which wraps around some of these existing tree saves. Most of the trees that will be removed, if you look at their tree survey, are in this area for the additional office, as well as for the townhomes. The landscape reduction that they're requesting, it may be easier to show you here along Windward Parkway. It's a small area. It's only 46 feet, very small in this area. So they need a reduction from the 20-foot landscape strip to 17 feet just for the 46-foot area. And that's because there's a jog in the right-of-way. So just to follow the right-of-way line. That's the variance they're requesting here. And also to touch on the variance for the stream buffers that are here. I think this is probably a good exhibit to show. This is showing the existing parking lot. So you can see that the parking lot is encroaching currently on those stream buffers. Here's the entrance into the existing HP development, and then there's the parking lot that's located within the stream buffer here. So the variance request, just want to make that clear for this particular stream buffer, is to remove some of the existing parking, pavement, and be able to come back and remove invasive species and replant that area. They've also submitted their civic space calculation. That they have the exhibit that was included. With the civic space, they are required to, they have 16.04 acres or 31% open space. The MU district requires a minimum 10% civic space, as well as 1 acre of open space per 100 population generated. Since the census estimates that 2.76 residents live in a unit per household in the city, 10.43 acres of open space is required, as well as 5.19 acres of civic space. So they have met that requirement, and they've submitted a rendering that shows the civic space as well as the amenity space. Amenity space is depicted around most of the buildings, and of course, in the property with the areas developed as rooftop amenity. It's including yards, balconies, landscape areas, entry features, plazas, outdoor seating, and clubhouse and pool areas. We'll go back to the site plan. And when rental's included in an application, we give careful consideration to our recommendations because we want to maintain the balance that's set forth in our housing policy. The housing policy states that to maintain a balance between owner-occupied and renter-occupied in Alpharetta such that at least 68% of the housing stock is owner-occupied. There are several other factors that we look at when we consider a for-rent product, such as the mix of uses, the long-term viability, impacts to city facilities and services, as well as traffic and school impacts. Office space already exists on the property, and high-density housing should be tied in with office space where the jobs exist and where jobs are going to be created. The existing 517,399 square feet of existing space and the planned 807,900 square feet of new office would generate a little over 5,000 employees. So that is part of the recommendation as why we would recommend approval of this request. The city's rental housing study, which we updated in June, recommends an annual target entitlement of approximately 116 for-rent units per year in order to achieve our housing policy too. Now, the 68 owner occupied housing policy is included within our comprehensive land use plan. The rental study is a goal. It's not an adopted policy, but that's what we use as our target. The current U.S. Census American Community Survey 5-year estimates show the city's currently at 68% owner-occupied housing units, or 67.7 to be exact, slightly below the 68%. And we have included a table that shows what we've approved over the last couple years. And if for rent use is approved, a condition is recommending limiting a certificate of occupancy until 2024 in order to meet the city's housing policy. In addition, I want to add that staff adheres to a 5-year timeframe when making recommendations on public hearing requests for rent use. The reason that we do that is because the housing policies are set by the public as well as the council as part of that public hearing process for the comprehensive land use update. So with our recommendations are based on that current policy, which could change, of course, in the next 5 years. So this applicant is in compliance with the request because the rental would be completed by 2024. Regarding traffic, based on the uses proposed, the mixed-use development is expected to generate 931 AM peak hour trips and 998 PM peak hour trips, which represents a 27% decrease in the AM peak hours and a 28% decrease in the PM. The reason for that is because they have 1.5 million square feet in entitlement for office, so the reduction in the office and the addition of possible shared trips is the reason for the decrease. Of course, this was considered a development of regional impact. It went through the DRI process, and there are conditions which were recommended, which are included within our recommendation. And also, I skipped over the elevations, so I'm going to go back to that. So they submitted several different elevations. I'm going to show you a few of those that they submitted with the site plan. So the first one that I'm going to show you is actually the view looking in from the corner of West Side and Windward Parkway. And that's the existing building. So if you're thinking about the existing HP 500,000 square feet, that's these two buildings. These would, the buildings at the front, which are the retail and office.
Ms. Cook, just to clarify, I had a question were these in our packet? If so, do you know which category they were under?
That's a good question. Let me see if we can see where it is in the packet.
Have view 1, 2, and 3.
I'm sorry, you have what? View?
I don't believe we have view 1, 2, and 3. We have view 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
That's fine. As long as we know that they're not in here, I'll stop searching.
Okay. Sorry for that. So you only have 4, 5, and 6? Okay. So this is view 1, which should have been included in your packet. Apologies for that. So this is the intersection of Windward and West Side Parkway, and these are the two HP buildings. Of course, These would be the new retail office mix that would be added at the corner. And part of what they're trying to do, of course, is to make that corner more vibrant, to draw people into that area, into the center where the restaurants and the green space are located. View 2, which I guess is not within the packet, this is along 400. So this is the 60-foot tree buffer that's required, as well as the office buildings that they're requesting. And in this rendering, this is the existing HP buildings and the existing hotel. View 3, Windward Parkway, and this is west side, 2 existing buildings. And you're looking at the water feature as well as the public space that's located in the center. And then you can see the townhomes to this side. View 4, so this is looking into that public space. And view 5, which is also within that public space. They also included typical residential elevations, and this may not, I believe they sent this out by email. It might not have made that to the packet. And this is within Avalon. So they've sent some, renderings of what could be built for the residential townhomes, and these are located within Avalon. And they also sent some different types of architecture for the townhome, for the residential. And of course, all of this would have to go through the design review board. We also sent the information to Fulton County Schools because residential development is known to increase school enrollment. Fulton County Schools calculated the potential number of children that could reside on the property, and based on the total number for all school levels, it can be assumed that the proposed development could house approximately 25 to 195 school-aged children. It's a big range, but that's using their typical calculations. This item was considered at the October 6th Planning Commission meeting, and staff had recommended approval subject to 41 different conditions at that meeting. We had no public comments. After discussion, Planning Commission did recommend approval subject to staff's conditions, which I'll go through those. Number 1, the 51.86 acre property shall be zoned MU. And the conditions are detailed within the staff report, and I'll summarize each one of those. 2, the architectural style shall be representative of the submitted renderings labeled Exhibit A with final approval by DRB. 3, minimum percentage of commercial use shall be 4%. 4, development regulations shall be as follows. And office use shall be limited to no more than 1,325,299 square feet, which includes the existing 517,399 square foot office building. And building height shall be limited to no more than 8 stories. And I should have mentioned earlier that the 1988 approval for Oxford Green allowed up to 10 stories. So they would still be within the height that was originally allowed. Commercial retail uses shall be limited to no more than 36,900 square feet, and restaurant use shall be limited to no more than 36,900 square feet. For sale residential, up to 98 dwelling for sale townhomes shall be permitted, and up to 4-story buildings. No more than 10% shall be rented as stated in the HOA documents. D, for rent residential. After January 1st, 2024, 280 dwelling for rent units shall be permitted a certificate of occupancy in accordance with UDC for rent requirements. At grade for rent units shall be limited to no more than 3 sides of the building and shall have walkouts with sidewalk connections. Maximum building height shall be 6 stories. Units shall be studio, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms with no more than 30% of the units being 2-bedroom and no more than 5% being 3-bedroom. For-rent units shall be constructed concurrently with a minimum 193,200 square feet of office use, which may include the rehabilitation of the existing office building. A certificate of occupancy shall not be issued for rent units until 193,200 square feet of office has been constructed, rehabilitated, or is substantially under construction rehab as determined by staff. The for-rent units shall be part of a mixed-use development containing a minimum of 50 acres and incorporating retail, restaurant, for-sale, residential, neighborhood, grocery, and a minimum of 193,200 square feet of office. And then it further talks about the required amenities. E deals with the parking decks and what those look like. 5, Oxford Green Phase 2 shall be limited to the following uses and further restricted by conditions of zoning: office, service, retail, restaurant, no drive-through, residential for sale, and for rent. 6 has the list of service retail uses that would be permitted. The only thing that was changed at the Planning Commission was G. The applicant requested to add clinic as a conditional use, which was accepted. 7, minimum building setbacks shall be 20 feet on Windward Parkway and West Side Parkway. Side and rear setbacks shall be 10 feet and shall be in addition to required buffers. Building setbacks along internal streets shall be 10 feet for the first 60 feet of building height and 20 feet for buildings over 60 feet. 8, minimum parking requirements also states developers shall construct the parking deck on parcel 1 to allow for the addition of a 7th level in order to accommodate an additional 273 parking spaces. If the city identifies a parking problem, developers shall construct the additional level of parking. 9, developer shall expand the sidewalk along West Side Parkway to 8 feet. And 10, new internal streets shall be substantially similar to the submitted proposed streetscape plan, including a reduction of the landscape strip. And I did not mention this variance, but the variance is in order to allow on the internal streets that you have a reduction in some cases from the required 10-foot landscape strip. If you think about if you're at Avalon and you're going into these retail spaces or into the front of the office building, you don't have a 10-foot landscape strip. Although most of these internal roads will have that 10-foot landscape strip, they're looking for a reduction where that makes sense, close proximity to the retail. 11, pedestrian bridges, stairs, elevators, and escalators may encroach over and into public spaces, provided that they do not impede pedestrian circulation or safety. 12 deals with the trees, as well as 13 and 14. 15, minimum 16.04 acres of open space shall be provided, which shall include a minimum 5.186 acres of civic space. 16 deals with the at-grade pedestrian bicycle connections, which shall be required throughout the site. 17, detention facilities. 18, main entrances off of Windward Parkway and West Side Parkway, as well as the corner of West Side Parkway and Windward Parkway, shall include minimum 2,500 square foot of open space and shall incorporate a water feature, sculpture, or similar focal point feature as approved by the Cultural Arts Commission and installed prior to the first certificate of occupancy. A minimum of 6 monuments, murals, sculptures shall be provided at prominent locations throughout the development, with unique monuments, murals, sculptures approved by the CAC. Approval and construction of at least 1 monument shall be required concurrent with the first CO for the for-rent building. A minimum of 1 additional monument, mural, sculpture shall be required concurrent with the CO for each subsequent phase of development. All sculptures shall be required prior to final CO issued for the last building constructed. 19, parking decks and retaining walls shall receive architectural facade treatment, be heavily landscaped. 20, developer shall provide bicycle racks, benches, trash receptacles, decorative crosswalks throughout, as well as working with MARTA to consolidate the 2 MARTA bus stops that currently exist along Windward Parkway frontage. 21, prior to LDP, the applicant shall submit for approval a document to be entitled Continuum Design Standards. 22, what the buildings that are, 22, plans for buildings, landscaping, and signage in the form of a sign package shall be submitted and subject to review and approval by the DRB. 23, backside of buildings or back of house functions, such as loading or dumpster area, shall not be visible from the public right-of-way. Parapet walls shall be used as needed to screen rooftop mechanical equipment and views. 24, at least one rooftop amenity shall be required within the development. 25, streets within development shall be private and shall include a planted median at the main entrance off of Windward and West Side Parkway. 26, requirements prior to the first LDP, as well as 27 and 28. And 29, in order to obscure parking lots, surface parking shall be screened from Windward Parkway and West Side Parkway with architectural features and/or landscaping with final approval by DRB. 30, a 20-foot landscape strips planted with trees and shrubs shall be provided along Windward Parkway and West Side Parkway, except that the landscape strip along Windward Parkway shall be reduced to 17 feet for a length of approximately 46 feet. That's just that small area here. 31, minimum 10-foot planted buffer and setback shall be provided along the south property line. 32, provide detailed street planning for Windward Parkway. 33, parking lot islands shall be planted with trees. And 34 has the conditions to mitigate the encroachments here by where they're removing mostly pavement and installing a mulch trail as well as additional landscaping. And then conditions 35 through 41, those are conditions as part of the general approval by Greta and their notice of decision. And so those are also included for your consideration. And that is the Planning Commission recommendation to you, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Have any questions for staff at this time? Councilman Minor? Okay, that puzzled look, I thought maybe you had a question. Ms. Cook, while I've got you up here, I had just a question. As I read through the conditions, I think I see how you arrived at this, but if you don't mind, I'd like you to explain it to me so I make sure I'm not just reading things into it. The concurrency of this, because the plan that they brought forward, I think has tremendous potential. And it's certainly improved over the original one, so I thank the applicant for the adjustments they've made to the original. But I don't really see anything that says specifically that certain things have to occur before other things happen. But I do see how you may have arrived at that, especially I think it's in condition 4D, if I remember right. But I'm specifically talking about, you know, this plan is great when you have all the components together.
Sure.
But we've seen in other instances that sometimes if that's not written into the approval and conditions, that some things may never occur. Could you explain how you've made sure that this ends up being what's being presented to the public tonight?
Sure. And our code states within the MU that it has to be built concurrently. But we also tie it to specific numbers because it was important to us in this particular case that we have the redevelopment, the renovation, rehabilitation of these office buildings, or it could be, of course, additional office that's built. So what we did is we looked at other approvals that are similar, like at the Summit, and what was the requirement for the amount of office to be built as part of a concurrency. So that was our number that we arrived at with the 193,000 square feet of office. We also have in here that you have to build the grocer, that you have the other requirements as part of that mixed-use development. We do not have a requirement in here that they have to build a certain number of the for sale. Prior to CO, it was more or less tied to the office. But of course, we already have within our mixed-use code that it has to be built concurrently. So we will make sure that the retail that's here as well as the green space are being built concurrently.
Okay, and I think part of that was, my concern at least, was when I was reading, I didn't see that where did I write it down? The condition I noted was that the owner occupied shall be permitted, but I don't really see any requirement for it to be built.
And you're correct. We did not put a requirement for that portion to be built. So that could be something could be added. Of course, once it's zoned for that and the site plan shows that, any other changes from that would have to come back to council. It is a significant percentage of the residential because it's about 26% of the overall residential. So that's something that could be added.
Okay.
Clarification, because without adding that for clarification, the focus is going to be to have, to work on this section here. So I think it would, if you want to see that, a certain number CO'd before there's a CO for rent, we could certainly work on a condition.
Okay, and we can
On that.
speak to the applicant
Okay.
about that, but as I went through it, like I said, most of the other things had something that had to occur, but that one doesn't necessarily require it to occur.
And they have in their development phasing plan, it says second quarter of 2024. So they're actually showing the for sale to be built prior to the rent or at the same time. But yes, absolutely. We can look at a condition to make sure that happens.
Thank you for clarifying. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything, so we take it up. So are there any other questions for staff at this time? Councilman Mitchell?
Kathy, previously, when we have approved these things, it's always been stated how many school children would be added based on the housing and rental. Historically, like when we're looking at Avalon, it nowhere near met the kind of numbers that could be added. Is that right?
That's my understanding. Now, the schools, Fulton County Schools gave us a number of 25 to 195, so that's a big range. What we have seen at existing mixed-use developments is we don't have a lot of the school-age children residing. I think the highest number that we found at Avalon, and that was us checking, 2-3 years ago, was 8 school-age children at one time, and there's 512 rentals at Avalon.
Okay. That's what I recall, 6 to 8. And,
Yes.
And I believe currently all the elementary schools are in decline in our area as
They
far
are
as enrollment.
decreasing enrollment, that's correct.
All right. And one other question. When we went through Avalon to add the rental and the homes, that was all presented as, here's the renderings that are being presented. Why is that not included here?
I don't know why the applicant did not
Okay. I can ask
submit
them.
a specific architectural rendering, but I do, of course, they would have to go through the design review board.
Yeah, okay. I'll ask them. Thank you.
Were there any other questions from council at this time? Thank you, Ms. Cook.
Yeah.
If the applicant would like to come forward, now is your time to do so.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. I'm Julie Sellers with Dillard Sellers, and it's a privilege to be here tonight seeking approval for Continuum. Continuum is a thoughtfully approached 51-acre catalyst for the Windward Corridor, providing connectivity in the northern portion of the city and continuing to enhance and build upon the high-quality corporate culture that exists in Alpharetta. I am here tonight on behalf of the property owner and developer. It is certainly a privilege to represent represent Southwest Value Partners, who made a significant investment in the city when they purchased this property, the former HP campus. Joe Bucher, Ben Dance are here from Nashville, Jake Mack is here from California, and Angelina Pinto is here from Austin with Southwest Value Partners. Knowing that this was a significant and special development in the city, the owners engaged a best-in-class team. And so with us tonight, we have the full team, so we can answer any questions that you may have. And I'm just going to briefly introduce the different groups that are here. Kimley Horn was engaged for their engineering work, both on the civil and traffic side. Gensler has been the design team, and both representatives from the Los Angeles office as well as the Atlanta office. We have H. Gore as the landscape architects, and Stream Realty Brokers have been working with the owners on the office leasing and looking at how to really make this a great opportunity for additional new office in the city. This is a master plan that has been fine-tuned, and we are thankful for the collaboration with the city staff and with the elected officials. Through the course of this application process, we reduced the office and the residential and added additional open space. The comprehensive plan designates this property as a mixed use in the future land use category, and approval of this application will bring this property into the vision that was expressed in the comprehensive plan. The percentages and the zoning code for mixed use require 25% residential. We are right at 27%. Office is 25. We're exceeding that minimum threshold in the code. And then the retail, the code would have us have 10% retail, and we are requesting the variance for 4% of the retail. I'm a visual person. I cannot, I now know, I have some of my comparison points when somebody says it's 5,000 square feet or it's 100,000 square feet, but it helps me to really visualize. And so I hope this will be helpful for you. When we look around the city, Alpharetta has done a great job at really retaining and creating meaningful green space. And so when I'm looking at this master plan, it's a great looking master plan. We've got a lot of green space, but I think just really understanding the scope is important. So what we've shown you is a comparison, and you will see at the bottom of your screen, that is the city center's green, the center green that is so vibrant. We know people love congregating there. And just to give you the comparison, that's about a half an acre. And so when you look at the retail around it, it's about 2.5 acres. So we are exceeding what you have here at the city center. A couple of other points of comparison is Avalon and Lakeview Park, just to show the size, scale, and scope of the green space that really this retail village is centered around. Joe's going to talk in more detail, but just wanted to highlight the fact that we are complementing the existing uses in the city. We are not competing with Avalon. We're not trying to be a second Avalon. Avalon stands alone and is great. Similarly, we're really focused on this being a modern day office place. So I'm going to let Joe talk about that a little bit more in detail. I did think that it was important to note, just again for comparisons, I think that they can be helpful. As you see on the screen, in pink is where we have the commercial space. And again, we've got 51 acres. We're proposing about 73,800 square feet of retail. Avalon has 500,000 square feet. It's a pretty significant difference. The Battery has 575,000 square feet, and Halcyon, admittedly, this is the entitlements, not what's built, but they're entitled for over 500,000 square feet. We are really just pretty closely aligned from a scale standpoint with the amount of commercial, the retail, the restaurants that we have here in the city center. But I think what's significant to note is that we have twice the amount of land. So it is a modest amount of residential, again, not trying to compete or take away from the retail nodes in the city. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Joe to talk. And sorry, I don't know on the technical side why slides 1 and 3 were not in the agenda packet. I did not notice that. This was submitted to the city quite a while ago, so none of this is new information, and I'm going to let Joe take it over.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Mayor and council members, and thank you for your time tonight. We're thrilled to be here. We invested in this project and in this community 20 months ago, and we have diligently, thoughtfully gone through and master planned and worked with stakeholders and staff to go through and really think about what this project really wants to be and what it needs to be in this portion of the city. That team, like Julie said, is here. So they're all sitting right behind me here. Many friendly faces from my end, but we've also brought the subject matter experts here so that if you have direct questions, we have the people here that can directly answer those things. Hopefully I can answer a bunch of those things for you. Tell you a little bit about ourselves. So Southwest Value Partners, we are headquartered in San Diego, California. We have our design development construction office in Nashville, Tennessee, and we have an office in Phoenix, Arizona. We are really focused on really high quality, great projects in real estate. We have projects from California through the Sun Belt, all the way here to Atlanta. Our most well-known project, and you may have heard of it, is Nashville Yards in Nashville. That is where Amazon landed during the HQ2 search in 2018. Why is that important? That's not what we're building here. But what it is demonstrative of our quality, of the care and effort that we bring to a development, and the thoughtfulness by which we will approach this development in the same way that we've done the things in the other parts of the country. This is all about a drive towards quality. We've experienced this seismic shift in the world. It was brought about by COVID. It was accelerated a trend that was happening, but it was a seismic shift in what the workplace really means, and how we make mixed-use projects work and why they're important. That goes back to what Alpharetta and why Alpharetta means so much to us. This place is vibrant in its quality, and we think that flight to quality, that flight to excellence for a community like this is what's going to make Continuum and what is already making your community so wildly successful. So how do we really rethink this? We have approached this project as first and foremost that next generation. It's that next generation of workplace and mixed use. It is about creating a cultural centerpiece for a company. We need to move away from the idea that office is a place of work that is instead a place of community. It is a place for people to come and gather together and join into a common goal. Now, what's going to get somebody to leave their living room when they have a ham sandwich at the refrigerator right there is something that's excellent and walkable, and it has that community feel to it. So that's why we started down the road that we did to design this project through a sequence of events. So if you're looking at the screen and you can see what we're doing, we've set up everything from view corridors so that you can start to see through these structures from the intersection at Windward and West Side. And you can see that in the corner of this image. Why is that important? Because right now you have two super Walmarts jammed together at the corner of that intersection that are impenetrable. We had to pull people back into that. And then what we wanted to do is, as you penetrated into this project, create a series of public events that is a new node and a new catalyst for this end of the city. Create a destination at Continuum that centers around a village green. And you've seen some images of that village green. You've seen some scale pieces of that village green from Julie. But that's the there, meaning that that's the place that people come to and they congregate, and it becomes the node and the central vision for how this project radiates out from there and creates a vibrant community and neighborhood on this northern end of the campus. So this office, as a center place of work and cultural centerpiece, needs other elements to succeed, which is why we're proposing a mixed use. That is that retail, destination style restaurants, great service pieces that plug into this end of the area, provides places for those people that are in those office buildings. Maybe it is a dry cleaner or a nice little shop, but then also those destination things for the neighborhood themselves and for the rest of the community to be able to come to. You anchor all of that with our next piece, which is the multifamily residential. I know that rental residential is always carefully thought about on how to implement those pieces. We have carefully thought about that ourselves. We think that that's important from a vibrant, walkable, alive community. It is, it is a linkage between that and the office building, which we've worked very closely with staff on exactly how to do that. But then it's also about driving up the character of those streets. You get that residential feel on the streets, you get that heads in beds, and it's really vibrant for those spaces to really exist and succeed. And then you add in, of course, the for sale residential into the entire equation, and you end up with a neighborhood, a node, a piece that ties into the rest of the community. We've thought very carefully about how each one of these streets works, the character along each one of them, and how the buildings themselves relate, knowing that the density actually gets stronger as you run from the intersection of West Side and Windward back towards Georgia 400, that the density actually increases away from the rest of the streetscape, the community, things like that, so that we don't overwhelm the way that anything necessarily works. And in addition, as we think about what that next generation of office is and what those destination pieces are, how do we get people into and out of these sites? Our team has really been really thoughtful about, we collect people on site, we create these great passageways and corridors, and then we have great access to Georgia 400, and then big throughput streets like West Side and Windward be able to access the rest of the community. We really think about the heart of this piece, and I'm going through a couple images that you've already seen that Kathy showed you earlier, about what the lifestyle and character in one of these places is really like, and it is about variety and delight. And we've tried to really mix that into the parts and pieces that you're seeing before you in the campus. Moments that are that campus green, to those lower rise pieces, to even tying into some higher rise kind of buildings that sit in the background, all mixed with that living percentage. So I'm just really, really proud of the hard work that the team has done throughout this almost 2-year effort to really thoughtfully think about this site. And we really, thank you for your consideration today, and welcome any questions that you may have on this project.
Any questions from Councilman Heights?
Good evening, Ms. Sellers.
Hello. Evening.
Do appreciate the changes and updates from the initial iteration. Find it to be a very handsome project that you all put together. I have a question on condition 4C. It says up to 98 for sale townhomes. And of course, up to 98 means 0 to 98. Is it the intention to build 98 townhomes?
Yes, the intention. I mean, quite frankly, we would have liked to have built more, but to be able to comply with the city's code as far as the minimum driveway width and length, length and width, both factor in, as well as the city's code requires each townhome to have a 2-car garage. So that really constrained, we ended up having to reduce. So yes, the intention is definitely to.
Okay, and I
Yes.
did note that you said you're at 27% residential, so if you dropped off a few, you might fall below that. But would it trouble you if we took out the words up to? Where it says up to 98?
I think our preference would be to leave the condition as staff worded it. And the reason for it is this, is if we get in there, we have this planned at the moment, but if there is a desire to have, let's say we wanted to do 4 of them that were larger units, and so we end up with a similar bedroom count, but maybe we have 1 or 2 fewer units, I think that really ends up constraining the ability when we get into the fine tuning on the planning to really, I think it could have an adverse impact. I think your intention is to make sure that we're building these, but we want to make sure that we're building them in a way that's reflective of the people who are living in Alpharetta and the homes that they would desire.
Okay, well, and I think that's a really good explanation as to, it's not 0 to 98, but it's darn close to 98. And I'm also comforted by the fact that if you're currently at 27% residential, you can't drop off too many residential units without coming back seeking another variance.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilman Mitchell.
Thank you. My question is for the gentleman. Thank you for coming and being interested in Alpharetta. Mine is more as far as the experience that you feel when I'm more concerned about how these buildings will last over time and how it fits into our community. Do you still own Nashville Yards?
Yes, we do.
So do you maintain the properties or do you sell them?
No, sir, we're typically long-term holders.
Okay, so as things need to be adjusted or updated, you're there to make sure that they fit in with the modern.
Yes, sir, that's a big part of what we do. We actually have a large hospitality portfolio, for example. We go in and renovate those hotels on a very regular, very frequent basis. You have to do the same thing with office buildings. You have to do the same thing with retail. It's kind of real estate is much more evolutionary than people would initially think.
Okay, so as far as the character imagery, I'm used to seeing like these videos that come through and they walk you through or drive you through the whole thing. So as far as the imagery that you've shown us and the character, what of these, like starting on Exhibit A, what of these do you plan on incorporating?
Just to make sure, what I've got up on the screen, that when you're talking about the character imagery, we showed you some, the 1 through 6 earlier, but are you referring to the more character imagery that was in the packet?
Yeah, because most of the renderings were kind of stale and they didn't have the life added to them, and without a video, it's kind of. I want to make sure that what we're getting is what you all are proposing.
Right, which is why we put the representative images in here. We know we have to go through an entire another process, right?
Right.
Over the course of evolution of this project, where we add in all those layers and character and the things that you are looking for and that I am looking for as well.
But I've known in the past that if we don't go through and state what we're looking for before the DRB, we don't always get it because not every DRB member has any design experience. And so I want to make sure that I'm doing my job here.
Absolutely, sir. So let's go to the office buildings. I think you asked about the office buildings first.
Sure.
Is that the image that you see up for you that you were talking about?
You're at view 6?
Oh.
Or are you at view?
So what we put up on the screen from a character imagery standpoint, can you see that, sir? So what we're doing from a character imagery standpoint is we're trying to cast a wider umbrella about when we have a finished building, it will match this quality and this character that is out there. So what we see this next generation of office really being is this kind of tech campus vibe, integrated, exposed, almost community style buildings, right?
Right.
That they're not just these glass edifices that sit in a field somewhere. And that's really what we're trying to illustrate here is that they've got an urban character to them. There's probably a little bit of retail on the ground floor. They're lower rise buildings. They have expansive views. They have actually almost a residential feel where you can see kind of through them. That's what we're really trying to demonstrate here. High quality landscaping. The only way that these office buildings will work is to be highly, highly amenitized, meaning, as a fancy word, just meaning that you've got great stuff there. You're going to have dog parks. You're going to have workout facilities. You're going to have outdoor lounges. You're going to have bocce courts. I mean, the list is long of the kinds of things that you're going to have in buildings to really make them succeed. Right? So that's a big piece of this. If we move on to the next image, so what we're trying to do is not do the exact same thing maybe that you have other places, because this is a slightly different portion of the city, can act as a catalyst to really refreshen, I think, the windward corridor. So if we're looking at the image that's on the screen right now from a residential standpoint, very urban feel, right? So the higher density residential, make it feel like it fits with the office buildings that has a little bit of a tech feel, a little bit of tech edge, but really high quality materials. You do all the right things from a livability standpoint, so you have walkout units come out to the street in the right way. They're proportioned in the right way, and they feel like a residence. But the thing to take away from this image is not necessarily that's what that building looks like, but that is the quality. So we're going to use great masonry materials and excellent windows and have a lot of indoor-outdoor interactions in space, heavily landscaped, excellent sidewalks, and lots of fun things. And then when we go into, what is townhomes and that kind of feel like, the upper left-hand corner, bottom piece right there, you can use some of these traditional forms with some really do them in some really more modern ways, right? And start to tie those so it becomes a transition between all of those commercial buildings and this residential feel, and then work in, again, the high quality stuff that you're really looking for to make sure you have stone masonry, high percentage of glazing and openings in the projects themselves, and then just softened landscape streets with defensible kind of private space as part of that, meaning that you have segregated porches and you break the character and streetscape down. So that's why we've put these images in there, because that is absolutely what we intend to do.
And I should have mentioned, you probably could tell that Joe is an architect, and so he's got the design background. So he, I think, is very passionate about the design and know that it's important to the city and certainly important to the team, but to Joe very personally.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions from council at this time? I do have one question, and it's similar to the question that I asked Ms. Cook, but we've had a few different mixed-use developments, and one of my concerns is always making sure that the beautiful pictures and the plans that you've got come to fruition holistically. And the other question I was going to ask you about on this one is, I know that there's more office called for in this development, and I think that's a critical component. I think what you've done here is impactful on the buildings that already exist. But if you could just give me some comfort level about your opportunities or what you envision potentially attracting as a new office component as part of this development, I'd appreciate any clarity you could provide.
Let's go back to this one. So, what is the new office buildings, and what do they really want, and what do they connect? If we look at leasing velocity in the entire region, in the Atlanta region right now, it is something in the neighborhood of between 30 and 300% faster lease up in office buildings that are connected to mixed-use developments. So that's pretty tremendous. Those are big numbers. And what that is, that's a flight to quality story, and that means that these buildings that are not just sitting in a parking lot that you have to get in your car and go drive to another piece, but that are walkable and that are connected to these things. That's how you get a new building done, and that's what the next generation of users are really going to be looking for. When you build a new building in this development, and the way that we have planned this is to be as flexible as possible, meaning that as this office continues to change underneath our feet, we have some design flexibility on how those buildings themselves work. For example, if you have biotech in a building and that becomes a big driver, that is a very different office plan than a medical office building than to a corporate headquarters style building. Each one of those plates works differently. Each one of those experiences works differently. So we've thought about them in a horizontal mixed-use regime, which is a fancy way to just say that they're next to each other in a smart way, and they tie into each other. So we thought about how the streets terminate into the office buildings, how there's a character between those pieces, and we give ourselves flexibility in the final planning of how those buildings actually interact and work. So as those users come online.
And I want to add one thing that I think is just related to the office use. One of the things, and as Joe was mentioning, just the difference between the leasing when you're in a half-mile radius of a mixed-use area. So we really do believe that this is going to be a catalyst in this north part of the city, and will really not just bring up this property, but also the surrounding existing office buildings. We do believe that they will benefit from being able to retain and attract new tenants because of the proximity to some amenities in a way that does not currently exist in this corridor.
Thank you.
Jim, you could.
Yeah, I didn't expect you to tell me you were coming up with another Amazon headquarters or anything, but I figured I'd poke around.
We'll take it.
Any other questions from council?
I did want to follow up on that. What role do you all play as far as economic development? And do you have certain tenants that you're already targeting and talking with them about? Is that a fair way to ask it?
We will obviously use our relationships in other markets, and we will be touting this project very strongly, right? But what we have done in a place like Nashville, for example, is work arm in arm with the Economic Community Development team and customize basically the pitches to these various tenants as they come in, and you know, work hand in hand with them. These are the requirements, and this is how this would look, and this is how this would lay out, and this is how this would interact. So we would, you know, obviously work with all of our relationships. We're going to be chasing our own tenants to fill up the buildings, but then also anything that comes through from a requirement, you know, we will be incredibly responsive.
Okay. Hence the flexibility in architectural
Yes, sir.
styles.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council for the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
However, if there's anyone here from the public that would like to come forward and speak on this item, now's your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Tonight I'd like to approve MP-21-10/Z-21-12/CU-21-14/continuum as was presented here tonight with the 41 conditions presented by staff.
Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, a second by Councilman Hypes. Any discussion? Yes. Councilman Hypes?
I want to again thank the applicant for just a really nice looking project, but more importantly, taking the time to meet with council and members of the public and to hear what we had to say. Because I know where this project started, and there was a lot of stuff crammed in there. And you really heard what we had to say. You heard what we had to say about rental and ratios, and you responded and did your research. And you know, when that happens in Alpharetta, we have successful working relationships and projects. And so I wanted to really express my gratitude for what you all have presented. Don't know how the vote's going to go, but I, for one, find it a very attractive project. I think it's a very important corridor that you guys will be the cornerstone of the new Windward up there. And if it does pass, I wish you just nothing but tremendous success.
Councilman Dorito?
Thank you, Mayor. I too would like to thank Southwest Valley Partners and the representatives out in the audience, Ms. Sellers, first of all, for flying in here and making an investment of time and a lot of money to get to this point, for even just consideration of making a significant investment in the city of Alpharetta. And I, for one, appreciate that and thank you for that. A couple of times it's been referenced that this is a catalyst to the Windward Corridor. In fact, when I first discussed this project with some of you folks out there, you probably recall me saying that I wanted this project to have a vision that actually acted as a economic stimulus to that area to basically regentrify that area, if I could use that term, or you know, act as a catalyst for economic growth. I was concerned that I saw some stores closing down, and a lot of it may have been due to the pandemic and what have you, but it definitely needs a shot in the arm over there to keep Alpharetta an economic powerhouse, not only in Fulton County or the state, but in the region. There's a reason why you're sitting out here investing this money in our city, and somebody, one of your representatives, I think it was Ms. Sellers, may have said this, that Alfred has done a great job, and we've done a great job, not me personally, but many people before me as well, in attracting interest in our city like yourselves. You can go anywhere around this country and attempt to do something like this elsewhere, and you chose Alpharetta, and that means a lot to me personally as a city council representative of the people I represent. And I know our staff has worked really hard. I want to thank them to getting it to this point. I do see this as a significant decision tonight for the future of our city. And once again, thank everyone involved, including my colleagues on the council, to work through this for the last 20 months, as you pointed out, Joe, that you decided to make an investment in our city. So I look forward to supporting this evening.
Councilman Mitchell.
I want to echo some of those comments. I think our city has always valued, and we want to be first in class in everything we do. And so we welcome developers who we find are first in class in their development strategy and in bringing in new ideas. And I hope you'll find that we as a city are constantly embracing new ideas and new ways to do things and to do business. And that's made us successful in many ways, but it's helped our citizens because they all pay a lower tax base when we get these kind of projects. And so I wish you all the best. I hope you get the best development in there and the best new corporations in there. And I do look at this as a catalyst for what can happen not only on the west side of Windward, but that it'll filter through our Windward business district, and new things will come about because of this. So good luck, and I definitely can support it.
Any other discussion? Well, I do have a few things to say. I'll echo the previous comments, but I do want to share, as I first looked at this project, and I was very skeptical of the original composition, because what I was hoping to see was something that we could implement citywide. You know, we were blessed to have Avalon coming out of the recession, and it was setting the bar for what a mixed-use development in the Southeast, at least, could be. And it's been a tremendous catalyst for a lot of what you see in Alpharetta over the last 10 years. However, you can't have a lot of Avalons real close together. It's a size and a scope that you just can't support it. And so as we look at the change in the world since COVID, and Alpharetta has over 20 million square feet of Class A office space, and we're blessed to have a great community and great major employment centers in our community. However, that world is changing, as you mentioned, and as we've all come to understand now. And so what I have been looking for is the mayor looking to the future of our community and an evolution of office space that's changing, and most of our office stock is 20 years old plus. Is how we can provide what employers are looking for now. And what you've brought before us today is that product. I believe that, and I believe you'll deliver on that product. And I say that because I've been mayor about 4.5 years. A few months after I was first elected as mayor 4 years ago, one of my first initiatives was to get to know our major employers. And one of the tours we did was over at HPE that owns this building, well, did own this building. And we had a great conversation with them when we talked about it. But I remember sitting around with their leadership team at the time, and one of the things they said was, you know, they got the nice shiny Avalon about 3 miles down the road. It's like, you know, we just wish we had somewhere we could, you know, there's restaurants 6 lanes across on the other side of Windward Parkway and you know, in other directions, but they didn't consider it like walkable and part of their environment. And they were, even 4 years ago, pre-COVID, the employees that were on that site were wanting to see something that gave them that amenity, that feeling of being in a place they wanted to spend time in. And I move forward to now, and it's not what they want, that's what they demand. And because the employees demand it, the employers are forced to provide it. And so when I look at what you're presenting here, I see that's, as Councilman Mitchell mentioned, this is a size and a scale, but a great mix that I think can be applied in various parts of our community without any negative impacts. I mean, the office traffic is going to be reduced moving forward, period. And I think the mix that you've put together here is a healthy mix that doesn't really change our community dramatically. It just brings things closer together in neighborhood-size development. So I'm excited about it. I hope you're very successful with this. I do support it, and I appreciate your efforts. So if there's no other discussion, all those in favor of the motion to approve MP-21-10/Z-21-12/CU-21-14 continuum as outlined by staff with the conditions in their staff report. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Congratulations and thank you. Look forward to working with y'all to make it successful.
Good luck and thank you.
So that'll wrap up the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting, and we'll move on to new business. First item under new business is RFP-21-104 North Point Parkway Improvements Design Phase, Task Order Number 2 for Columbia Engineering and Task Order Number 2 for Atkins.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make sure on the resolution for the use of eminent domain on the online agenda, that's letter A under new business, so I just wanted to see where that landed.
I've got 3 agendas in front of me, and I appreciate you pointing out that I'm reading from the wrong agenda. My apologies. So the first item under new business was to be the resolution authorizing the eminent domain for property owned by BRI 1870 North Point LLC. And Ms. Eswine, I believe you had a recommendation.
Yes, actually, while it is currently letter A under new business, I would ask the council to move this to after executive session.
Any objections from council? So I do a little house cleaning here, and we'll change the agenda to move that to after our executive session meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you keeping me straight here. So we'll move on to item B under new business, which is RFP 21-104 North Point Parkway Improvements Design Phase, Task Order Number 2 for Columbia Engineering and Task Order Number 2 for Atkins. Pete Sisevich, you have the floor.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Put a little slide here real quick. Just a refresher of where we're going. Long story, really short, this request of funding for Columbia as well as Atkins is to take this concept plan you see on your screen and convert to full construction plans. That's utility plans, grading, profile plans, erosion control, drainage, landscaping, the whole kit and caboodle, right-of-way drawings as well. And I went through the public comment period. Kathy's team did a great job showing why the 4-lane road will work, and it is Public Works' responsibility to take it to the next level. And we're looking forward to working with Columbia as well as Atkins, who will manage this project for us through the federal procurement process. I should say federal design process, excuse me. And we're looking at our goal of fall of 2025 to go out to bid. That is our goal. There are several steps to take through this, and unlike our city projects where we work in parallel a lot of times, we'll go after right away while we're working on construction plans. We must complete everything in sequential order with the GDOT plan development process. So if there's any specific questions regarding the scope of works, I'm more than happy to answer those, but we're recommending moving forward with Columbia as well as Atkins. Yes, sir.
Hold on, I just want to clarify because the agenda I read was not for that item, so I read the agenda that called for North Point Parkway Improvements Design Phase. Once again, it's a little.
That's what that is.
Oh, I thought he was talking about North Point.
North Point Parkway.
Parkway, what's on your screen?
Oh, I know. I'm just saying the agenda I'm looking at, never mind. I should have crossed them out.
No worries, no worries.
Please proceed.
Councilman Binder.
Councilman Binder.
Sorry.
I was about to answer just because you told me I could, Pete. But to be clear, I know we're talking about lost negotiations, where we are on different things. And on North Point, do we have funds currently for the where are we on construction funds?
So there, right now, there's currently $5 million from the ARC, as well as there's $10 million allocated in our T-SPLOST 2 program. We'll be pulling we'll be pulling the funds for this requisition here, these requisitions, from the T-SPLOST account.
Yep.
So the balance will go towards construction. Of that construction, it's right-of-way acquisition, easement acquisition, utility relocations, et cetera. So is there enough, if your question is there enough funding that we have today for the whole entire corridor? The answer is no. However, things are in the works, and Kathy's team and the ARC is looking at funding additional dollars towards this project.
And this is going to be a loaded question. You're nice enough to not say that, but how much do you think the construction will be? And I know knowing that you're going to need some of this engineering design to answer that question. So swag answer.
So one of the great things about the GDOT PDP process is we have to provide a cost estimate. And that is part of the process. And they were coming in, just the construction alone, over $20 million. Then we'll still have right-of-way acquisition to go through and utility locations to go through. So you add all that stuff up, we're looking right around $30 million projected if there's, even just a little bit of inflation going forward.
Yeah.
And contingency. So we're sitting right around $30 million.
30 million, we got 15, but we got
Funds coming through, as well as this whole process that we're about to work through with Columbia is, now, the word value engineering is a poor word, but what we're doing is we're basically going to take what we think it might cost and narrow it down and potentially build a retaining wall for $10,000 instead of spending $25,000 for an easement. So there's going to be cost savings as we progress through this process.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Any other questions for staff on this item? Thank you, sir. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, sir.
However, if anyone would like to come forward at this time, now's your opportunity. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. I have a motion from council.
Yes, Mayor. Move to approve RFP 21-104 North Point Parkway Improvements Task Order Number 2 to Columbia Engineering for design services in the amount of $1,436,400 for the purchase order 22000078. Approval of RFP 21-104 North Point Parkway Improvements Task Order Number 2 to Atkins for project management services in the amount of $350,000 for purchase order 21000296, and authorization for the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Dorito, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, and that was to approve RFP 21-104 North Point Parkway Improvements Design Phase as outlined in the motion. Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor Council.
Thank you, Pete. Now we'll move on to item Design Services Alpha Loop North Winds Parkway.
Yes.
Thank you.
Up on the screen is the current concept that the North Fulton CID is designing for the tunnel underneath Haynesbridge Road. And the tunnel is right here. There's a set of stairs right here. And part of the whole design concept was to try and make it ADA compliant. And in order to make it ADA compliant, there is a ramp, and that's where it says ramp access, as it's leading up towards the right in, right out, the rising roll, and the Fairfield end. The 6-foot sidewalk you see there, where it says sidewalk, is 6 foot wide. So if you came from Summit Place and you were wanting to hit the tunnel via ADA accessibility, You would walk along the 6-foot wide sidewalk and turn 180 degrees, a switchback, to go down the ramp. This is the preferred option of the North Fulton CID team, of the design team. This provides long-term use for bicycles. Without the ramp, you'd be looking at something similar to a ramp like that, where you basically put your bicycle in the wheel well there and go down the stairs. Not the most ideal for a bicycle, but it can be done. Looking at it, we then saw the possibility of providing a greater ADA accessibility by extending the Alpha Loop instead of through Summit Place along North Winds Parkway. And that markings in yellow, the rectangle, is what's proposed in front of you tonight for design services. KCI is the firm performing the work for the CID team. They held their prices for this work, so I mean their hourly rate for the tunnel is the same hourly rate that we are receiving. This work would be done in parallel with the tunnel work, and we're recommending moving forward with this as leveraging the time that they have out there right now, get the survey work and get some economies of scale instead of waiting until later on. So with that, we're recommending to move forward. There isn't a set design date to be completed yet for this.
Thanks, sir. Any questions for staff? Councilman Hypes.
Director Pete, I see that this was a unbudgeted item, the $75,000, but I also understand that there's money out there to cover that, correct?
Correct. What we going through the working with the dirt team, we were able to get some cost savings with Darren Davis in our right-of-way acquisition, and those cost savings enabled us to come forward tonight for this request.
And then when we get to construction, the known source of funds would either be T-SPLOST and or, which is $12 million for the Alpha Loop, and or the Parks Bond, which is $7.5 million. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, our hope and intent is between those two projects that we could fund the construction of this phase here through savings.
So I understand that we got $12 million going from Chelsea Walk South, past Village Tavern, across West Side, basically over to North Winds, give or take. And then the $7.5 million is the tunnel project, which is the tunnel and the Haynesbridge Road segment. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what's envisioned. Yes, sir.
And so, you know, I'm not overly concerned at all about finding $75,000 in the budget for a non-budgeted item, but I do, you know, have some reservations about locating the construction costs, which is the whole purpose of the design. And is that somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million, or?
It's right around, we're thinking between $500,000 and $600,000 is where we are able to do some more fine tuning this afternoon.
And so to come up with $500,000 or $600,000 that's not budgeted, we would either have to have future construction costs come in below $600,000 of projection, but of course if they ran over, we'd be looking for money for those projects in addition to finding money for this North Wind segment, correct?
Correct.
Well, I'll wait for a discussion. You've answered my questions. Thank you.
Councilman Binder.
The Alpha Loop's been a pretty fluid project, and there's pros and cons with that. I think staff really has led the charge of getting quite a bit done over the few years, 3 to 5 years. It feels like it's been longer to me, but of that. But I want to ask, historically or moving forward, this came in as a budget request, but should this come in as a conceptual design change request first? Like, does council approve changing that? And because there were some questions around council, I think they're pretty valid, you know, to me. It's like, oh, well, you know, this is actually a design change to where we're doing. So what's our process now, and what are we doing moving forward as far as saying, you know, maybe passing the test first, of do we want to even consider this first before putting a budget amount.
I apologize, I don't quite follow.
I'm trying to be nice about this. I saw it as a budget request amount, where really this is a change in design.
So, okay, I got you. So when we were going through we're working with the CID concept team, and they had us at the table, we're discussing things moving forward. We were trying to figure out how to make this ADA compliant.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big goal of the CID board. Can we make this ADA compliant, get access to the tunnel? Then the discussion of the Alpha Link also got brought up, because that's going to be the connection between the Alpha Loop and the Big Creek Greenway. The Big Creek Greenway has lots of bicycles on it compared to the Alpha Loop, which is much more walkable. So what we're looking at is how can we, as a team, we're figuring out how can we get that connectivity. Because right now, the connectivity on a bicycle is really down the staircase. If we move forward the way we're going, because right now, the Alpha Loop comes here, you walk on the 6-foot wide sidewalk as proposed, turn around and come back down the 12-foot. So what we were trying to come up with internally is coming down with the 12-foot here and bring it up north winds where the existing hawk signal is, and have it more cohesive for the bicyclists. So it's basically, you have Summit Place and North Winds, parallel roads with the Alpha Loop. And we wouldn't bring this forward if we didn't find savings in our right-of-way acquisition phase. If we didn't have the funds, it would not come forward.
And I see that, but also there's opportunity cost of not expanding the Alpha Loop eastward to try to get to that Greenway connection. So using those cost savings could be used to apply for additional miles.
So you are probably, with the Alpha Link, if you were looking at putting the dollars towards the Alpha Link, you're probably 5 years out.
Mm-hmm.
Put any money towards construction funds towards Alpha Link due to the GDOT's PDP process. 4 would be going really fast for us. So we saw this as the ability to provide a better user experience on a bicycle moving forward. So internally, we did the concept plan. It looked out pretty well. We got with KCI to give us a cost estimate since we're working on the CID project and try to get some economies of scale.
And then remind me again, the CID, they've been a fantastic partner for a lot of our projects. So it's hard to pinpoint just one and see how they're partnered with us. But how much have they contributed towards this section, or the loop as overall?
They've allocated over $700,000 for the design of what you see in front of you.
And then we're going to be in talks with them for construction.
So we, earlier this year, got into a MOU with them that the 7.5 for the parks bond would go towards the project you see in front of you here.
Mm-hmm.
So we allocate it towards the tunnel.
So they contributed $700,000 towards a $7.5 million plus project.
Correct.
It's amazing that they can get away with the partnership. We push some partners for a 50-50 always. It'd be nice to get them there on that, but I know they contribute quite a bit on other things too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions from council? Thanks, sir. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if there's anyone that would like to come forward and speak on this, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we postpone this appropriation request for design until the first meeting of January 2023. That's my motion, and I'll be happy to discuss it.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
We have a motion by Councilman Hypes, a second by Councilman Dorito. And your motion was to postpone?
Yes, postpone this request until the first meeting of January 2023. And the reason selecting that date is while the design fee is manageable, the purpose of the design is to do the actual construction. And if we're to be $500,000 or $600,000 out of budget for that particular item. And given all of the uncertainty with the budget process caused by Fulton County's failure to provide clarity and answers on the whole lost situation, we will have some clarity about our lost revenues on the 1st of January after December 31st. And I think council can make a more informed decision about whether or not we'll be able to fund all of what we need to fund here, or whether or not our priorities would be better spent elsewhere. So, I wish it weren't the case, and we had some certainty with respect to our revenues, but that's going on down at Fulton County. That's not happening up here. So.
Thank you, sir. So the motion was to postpone until January 1st.
First meeting in January.
First meeting in January. Thank you. Everyone clear on the motion? Any discussion?
Yep.
Councilman Binder?
Makes sense to me. I would like to get clarity, and I hope it doesn't have to be till January 1st of the Alpha Loop and the steps that we're taking, incremental steps to it. It happened. I think we can probably slow the game down a little bit to see, okay, how do we want to move forward? For me personally, I'd like to add additional miles and quit moving around things that we have, but it's up for discussion for all of council there. So would love to have that conversation during the next few months while we have it on a holding pattern.
Any other discussion? Councilman Dorito?
Yeah, Mayor, I'd just like to echo Councilman Hype's concerns on this. We spoke before the meeting this evening. Pete, I didn't have a chance to catch up to you because it was right before the meeting where we were thinking through this, and not that we want to put a hold on this, but we're concerned about the next potential on budget item, 500 to 600,000, knowing that the mayor's in the middle of these lost negotiations with Fulton County. And it's just an example of what these negotiations and the stalemate that the county has created with the cities and through our mayors who's negotiating on behalf of their residents, of what it's doing to us in trying to operate our government. And so we're just being very conservative and respectful of taxpayers' money until we kind of let the dust settle and see where things are going to go, and whether or not, as the mayor's pointed out a number of times, if it goes south and Fulton County pulls out of the deal, we're going to have, $3 million, Mayor, to make up for in next year's budget. So we're trying to be very just conservative and respectful and appropriate unbudgeted monies in a way that's after we know what's happening with the lost negotiations.
Councilman Mitchell?
Pete, you had mentioned that the design changes would lock in the contractor at the same price currently.
The design engineer, yes.
The design engineering. Do you get a sense that would change if we wait till January?
We'll probably be able to hold the prices.
You feel like that?
I know that.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of the motion to postpone this decision until the first meeting in January of 2023, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. Thank you for bringing it forward, Pete. Hopefully, we'll get taken care of eventually. So the next item up is design services for Wills Park improvements and Wills Park Equestrian Center improvements, RFQ 22-1005 and RFQ 22-120.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council again. On the screen in front of you is an exhibit of Wills Park. It's both the recreation side as well as the equestrian side. And when we went out for the procurement, Barge was clearly the #1 firm to work with. Their proposals were outstanding. Their interview was impeccable. The team clearly had them listed as #1. So we started our negotiations with them on this process. A, not only the best firm, but B, going after economies of scale again, having one firm work together through this, as well as trying to piggyback on one another with the stormwater challenges of Wills Park. And so in front of you tonight is not only the equestrian, but the Wills Park recreation side. And some of the key components on the recreation side is adding 2 gateway features on either end of the park, on Old Mill Parkway at Wills, as well as Roswell Street. excuse me, and Old Mill Parkway, adding a spine connecting those two locations, which is a fancy word for a fancy wide sidewalk, as well as improving Waggy World, and adding a larger restroom facility for the baseball fields area. That cost came in at $625,650. And then the next phase is in conjunction and parallel is the equestrian side, which is much more complicated. We are dealing with existing facilities and infrastructure, not only in floodplain, but in the stream buffers. And we're going to work with Morgan and his team, as well as some of the equestrian experts that are on Barge's team, as well as Matt Casey, and how to make all this work, as long as with our engineering department side, with Jeff Sarah, excuse me, who has come up with already some good ideas regarding stormwater. And one of those things I want to mention is, if you look right here, this was the added parking lot on the plan. It's the highest part of the whole project. This rink right here, this area right here, is the lowest part of the project, right before you get to the stream. We're going to flip-flop them. Jeff Sarah's already discovered a cost savings by flip-flopping them, stormwater improvement underneath the parking lot. And so we're working with Barge already on things like that and get the creative side of things working forward. The schedule is going to be in parallel, but it's also going to have early releases. So when we get done with the gateway features, do a bid to get the gateway features constructed, do a bid to get the restroom facility, get a bid for Wacky World, as well as all the other little components to keep the project moving forward. So we're not going to have everything designed all at once and then go out for a bid. It's going to be piecemealed. So with that, answer any possible questions.
Any questions from council on this item? Seeing none? Great job, Pete.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
However, if anyone would like to come forward, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that council approve the award of RFQ-22-1005 and RFQ-22-120 to Barge Design Solutions for design of the Wills Park improvements and Wills Park Equestrian Center improvements, and authorization for the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Hypes, a second by Councilman Binder. Any discussion? All right, no discussion. All those in favor of the motion to approve design services, Wills Park improvements and Wills Park Equestrian Center improvements, RFQ 22-1005 and RFQ 22-120, please vote yes, otherwise vote accordingly. And it is passed unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor Council.
Thank you, Pete. So the next item up under new business will be the 3 fire engine acquisitions, replacement of units 84, 85, and 86. And before he gives his presentation, Ms. Eswine, if you don't mind reading the resolution, just to get that out of the way, because I'll forget if we don't do it now.
Yes, sir.
A resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, authorizing the execution and delivery of certain schedules and other documents related to the master equipment lease purchase agreement with Bank of America Public Capital Corp. as lessor, executed on February 18, 2016, for the acquisition, purchase, financing, and leasing of certain equipment within the terms herein provided, authorizing the execution and delivery of other documents required in connection therewith, and authorizing all other actions necessary to the consummation of the transactions contemplated by this resolution.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, sir, please proceed. Now that we know what we're going to be passing, if you can sell it to us.
Understood. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are requesting approval for the purchase of 3 new fire engines that will be used to replace existing units. These engines will be purchased through our current single source provider, which is Pierce Manufacturing, and will essentially be updated versions of the current units. The payments on these units will be structured as a 12-year lease, which I believe you have the schedule ahead of you. This request does accelerate our traditional replacement schedule, and the reason we're making this request is due to the significantly prolonged build and delivery times on fire engines currently, as well as the opportunity to save the city money through the avoidance of both known cost increases, such as a 6.5% increase that will take effect November 1st of this year, as well as a 3% cost increase that will go into effect at the end of January of 2023. In addition, we avoid probable cost increases through the continued increase in manufacturing cost, as well as the unknown of interest rates. And we will also be able to realize a prepaid discount of $135,000. We'll also be able to leverage a low locked-in interest rate that our finance department has been able to secure. And now I will do my best to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Councilman Heights.
If I overlooked it in the write-up, I apologize. What happens to the trucks that are being retired?
So obviously we'll continue to use those until the new units come in, because there is approximately a 28-month lag time on that. Once they come in, we're exploring different options, but one of the current options is use those to essentially trade in to help mitigate the cost of the equipment that we'll need for the new units.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from council? Just so I'm clear.
Yes, sir.
It's 28-month lead time on these.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
Glad we're going ahead and placing our order. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward and talk about the acquisition of 3 fire trucks, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mayor. I move for approval of the acquisition of 3 replacement fire engines through 10-8 Fire Equipment of Georgia at a cost not to exceed $2,353,251, and adoption of a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute all associated documents with the Bank of America Public Capital Corporation for the purposes of financing the 3 replacement fire engines.
Second?
Have a motion by Councilman
Third and
Heights.
fourth.
I think the second one was Dorito, or was it Binder?
I like fire trucks more than Dorito.
We'll give it to,
Hey, for the record, I used to drive one for 9 years.
all right.
I think I should get the motion.
Order. Motion by Councilman Hypes, a second by Councilman Binder, and that was to approve the purchase of 3 fire engine acquisitions, replacement of units 84, 85, and 86. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly.
You guys want to vote down there, or you want to discuss?
And it does pass unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Final item under new business this evening will be Kimball Bridge Waters Road Park conceptual site plan approval. Director Rogers, you do have to come forward now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, City Council. It's always a pleasure to be here. We are seeking tonight approval of the conceptual plan for the Kimball Bridge Waters Road Park as designed by the Breedlove Land Planning Group. We're going to... That's not what we're doing. Anyway, we are looking, we workshopped this item at the last council meeting. After that, there were no changes that came from the council, so we are presenting the same plan here tonight. This is basically a community park that has a small parking lot. It has a playground, restrooms, surface trails, and picnic areas. And we're just asking for approval of the conceptual plan so we can move forward with this project, as seen now on the screen.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from council? Thank you, Director Rogers. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
I do not have any public comment cards, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward and speak on this item, now's your opportunity. Just as a reminder, you have 3 minutes, and please give your name and address for the public record.
Thank you. I thought I had 4 last week. But anyway.
I gave you an extra minute because you were a rookie then.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor and Council. I came because of what I presented last time. I had some concerns. Many of the concerns by somebody that's in, maybe the gentleman that was just up here, were addressed as far as security and some of that other stuff. One of the things I wanted to find out, was it being approved or not? Because the biggest concern I have and still have was around the idea of the traffic. And what's interesting is, this is very timely, and this is probably going to take up all my time now. There's a new application in Alpharetta. I think it's called See, Click, and Fix. Are you familiar with it? Okay, I think it's a great application. And on the 14th of this month, which was only 3 days ago, a resident, not to be named, and I can't because I don't have their name, wrote a nice description of the issue around the Waters Road and Kimball Bridge intersection, where it was backed up, not all the time, past Sheehan Church and down past the fire department. Traffic backed up on Waters Road. That particular individual said, change the timing on the traffic light. Now, that's a layperson saying, I don't think it could be a timing problem, because I got some throughout the city that I complain about, but not to you guys. I still think it's a volume problem. And by doing this park with the access and egress out of there is just going to make this worse. And I am really concerned that the true due diligence hasn't been done for the morning traffic and the afternoon traffic to get a better feel from it before we do the first digging at that park to start, because I think you did a wonderful job on North Point Parkway, and I think you're throwing mud on it now that the people are going to complain once that has happened. So that's all I have to say about it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Pete, while you're here, do you mind addressing those concerns? And I don't know if you're familiar with the backup there, and if
I'm not familiar with the See, Click, Fix item. I do know that we've had some challenges, and Councilman Merkel can attest to this, of the signal timing and our loops working in operation correctly at that intersection, so it's being worked on. We have not released the contractor yet, so we're still working through those measures there. I also don't know what time of day it took place. I do know it backs up at that intersection, but I also know it backs up due to the big yellow school bus in the morning and the afternoon dropping off and picking up kids, which then backs up all the traffic all the way through. So, but from the size of the park it is, the left turn lane that is there for them to utilize, the neighborhood park aspect, we feel comfortable with this area.
Thank you, sir. Seeing no other public comment, do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mayor, I move the council approve the conceptual site plan for Kimball Bridge / Waters Road Park designed by Breedlove Land Planning.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Hyde, second by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, and that was to approve the Kimball Bridge Waters Road Park conceptual site plan approval as outlined by Councilman Hyde. Any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Binder.
I don't think the design will be impacted if anything changes as far as a right only or left only. So we definitely should move forward. You all have done a fantastic job with all these parks that we've purchased and trying to make them happen in fairly quick time. I will say that what the gentleman said on the left, I have concerns too. Some gut feeling on there, and I know that Kimball and North Point, we push back on development sometimes, saying there should not be a left turn on a busy street. And I just would be remiss if I didn't say anything, because last time I had this kind of feeling was the roundabout at Charlotte and no guardrails. And I thought that would have been, it made sense to me, and we didn't move forward with it. So I would like for us to review that more and err on the side of caution. But I know we can address that once the parks build up. So I would probably take a right and then take a U-turn if I was trying to take a left out of there. So I would not be messing with trying to take a left there. So don't know where we go from there, but hope we do review that more.
Any other discussion? Any comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. So that will wrap up the new business portion of tonight's meeting. Mrs. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
No, Mr. Mayor, I have no public comment cards.
However, this is the opportunity for anyone to come forward if you'd like. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Reports? Any reports this evening? Seeing none, we'll close reports. I believe we do have an executive session necessary this evening, so I'll call for a motion and vote to recess into executive session.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, second by Councilman Dorito, and that was to recess into executive session.
And
All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. Councilman Binder? Councilman Mitchell? And it is unanimous.
And just as a reminder, we may have action to take on that item A under new business that was moved to after executive session.
Thank you for the reminder. We'll be in recess for a few minutes.
Well, it is about 9 months.
My mic's on.
Yes.
Okay, good. Do I have a motion to reconvene this back into the meeting? Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilman Mitchell. All those in favor of reconvening, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. It just passed unanimously. We have reconvened. And I believe we have an item we need to discuss. Let me pull up. Ms. Eswine, do you have that in front of you?
I do.
Okay. I've got resolutions in front of me. I do not have the agenda in front
I
of me.
have it. So this is what was on the agenda as item A. It's a resolution. I'll just go ahead and read it, and then I'll explain. A resolution by the mayor and council of the city of Alpharetta authorizing the city attorney to exercise the city's powers of eminent domain to acquire certain real property situated in the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, for public purposes, including public transportation purposes. So this is related to the property for the Encore Greenway Trail. The resolution that was in the published agenda was for an easement only, but what I'm presenting now is that a revised resolution which would allow the city attorney's office to condemn fee simple title to the property and to proceed with the condemnation for full possession of the property rather than just the easement that was originally contemplated. Nothing else about that resolution has changed. The property is still the same. BRI 1870 North Point LLC, tax parcel 122610068704474. So with that, I would ask for the council to approve that resolution.
Any questions from the council? Mayor Pro Tem Markle?
No, I was getting ready to vote.
Okay. If there's no questions from Ms. Eswine, I'll call for a motion, or there is no public here, so we'll have no public comment.
Nothing personal.
I don't think Alex is considered public, but you're certainly welcome to speak if you choose to. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
So moved to approve the motion as presented by the city attorney, Ms. Eswine. Second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, a second by Councilman Dorito, and that was the to approve the resolution as read by City Attorney Molly Eswine, authorizing the use of eminent domain for property owned by BRI 1870 North Point LLC for the construction and extension of the Encore Greenway Trail. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Now, I do believe there are no more agenda items at this point. So do I have to call for?
Yeah, we got.
I know, we just never used to vote to adjourn, but I guess we have to now.
Motion to
We
adjourn.
have a motion by Councilman Dorito to adjourn.
Second.
We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please vote yes. Otherwise. And